with you?
I've got the textbook with me, yes.
Okay, but the actual assignment, because somebody sent me assignment 3, and I've got it with me. Now, what the person didn't do was to send me the GSAI, the Graduateness Skills and Attributes Inventory, because you will see that the first 2 questions are really asked out of that framework. And then the rest really talks about the Center for, or the College of Economic and Management Sciences. And it asks a couple of questions there. I think there's 2 questions, 3 questions that we maybe can quickly look at. Is everybody in agreement? Shall we quickly just try and look at the assignment, or shall we jump into today's topic? I'm open.
I am in for that one, Natalie.
Okay.
I'm happy to go ahead with the notes. I've already done the assignment, but if you want to spend a little bit of time on that, I'm quite happy to do that as well.
Okay. But I think a lot of people...
I'm also happy to discuss assignment 3, Natalie.
Okay, all right. So would you have your responses with you the way you've answered?
I could certainly go and get them, yes.
Okay, all right, then let's go through that. Thanks, Jolene. Is it Ira?
It's Ira.
Ira, thank you. Jolene, if you don't mind, I am going to put my email address in the chat quickly. So if you email me for last week's notes, I will be too glad to send it to you. It's just I don't get your information from the university for obvious reasons around Poppy. But if you want me to send the notes, please just email me and I will send it to you chop chop. Okay, so let's jump into the assignment before we go into the whole biological makeup of the human being. So the first question there says, the College of Economic and Management Science Framework of Graduateness Skills and Attributes addresses 3 holistic overarching attributes that are regarded as important transdisciplinary enabling outcomes of a university education. And it's given you there a couple of things: scholarship skills, B, global and model citizenship, C, lifelong learning, and then it asks you to match the holistic overarching attributes above to the College of Economic and Management Science generic transferable meta skills below. So that assumes that you need to know what is scholarship skills. You need to know what is global and moral citizenship. And it is actually contained within that tutorial letter that you got. So when you then go to match, so the first one you need to match is problem solving and decision-making skills. Which of those A, B, C categories do you think is the answer to number 1? You can write it in the chat for us.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi.
I just want to make sure I have the right assignment. So I downloaded the under the resources on UNISA. I downloaded the PDF there, and
Yeah.
it was 6 questions. Basically, we have to match the numbers according to the alphabetical letters. Is that the assignment that we're speaking of, or
Correct.
Okay, awesome.
It says on the cover page, it says assignment 3.
Yeah.
And unique number 618347. Don't know what that is for, but yeah, that's how you will identify. So there's a part 1 that talks to your graduateness. I can't answer that part because I didn't have the supporting scores that they are talking about. But I do, sorry, go on.
I don't think we submitted part 1. I think that was more to work through the work to understand part 2.
Okay.
If I'm correct, I'm not sure. Yeah.
All right. Because I thought I can only look at it if I've got the attachment, and the person who sent this to me, I asked to send the attachment that it speaks about, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So if you page over...
Natalie, would you like me to send the attachment to you?
Yes, thank you. That will be helpful.
Okay, I'll send it to you now.
Thank you so much. That will be great. So I will just need a minute to look at that. And if any one of you want to have another session, maybe, for us to look at the first part, we can definitely do that. But I'm interested in the page 3 that talks to the SEMS framework of graduateness. You need to match the 8 not problems, but the 8 items you need to match to either scholarship skills, global and model citizenship, or lifelong learning. So the first one, and you obviously need to know what scholarship skills is. It talks to a genetic skills, employability skills, any skill that is transferable. So problem solving and decision-making skills. I would like to know, which answer did you choose there? Anybody? Or has nobody done it yet? I know it's due tomorrow.
I have done it, but sorry, I wasn't able to download my the answer, the question sheet.
Okay.
So I'm still busy trying to get that because I had to go back online.
Okay.
So, sorry about that.
No, that's fine. So for people who wanted to know where to get these answers, maybe that would be the better approach. Because if you look in your tutorial letter and you go to point 2.3, there it really starts to give you the answers to all of these questions. So if you have little time and you need to quickly put this assignment together, I suggest print off your tutorial letter, go to point 2.3 on the tutorial letter, and all of those things are explained there. Now, I can go ahead and give you the answers that I came up with, but that might not be the correct answers because remember, I do not have the memorandum for this. I also didn't set this task, but as I read through it, there's just a couple of things that just was glaring obvious. And I think if you go through that process, then you will see it is actually not such a difficult assignment to do. Because the second question on that same page asks for the College of Economic and Management Sciences aims to produce graduates who are rare citizens in the community where they live and work. This means that graduates who are, and then it gives you 4 statements, and you need to pick up which of those 4 statements are most correct. Now, if you again go to your tutorial letter, you will see that UNISA has put in there a table for you that explains your graduateness. And at the bottom of that table, I'm actually paging there, page 16, there is a table and it talks to global citizenship, employability, and the concept, which is an acronym RARE, R-A-R-E. And that stands for responsible, accountable, responsive, and ethical. Now, I also just want to say something in terms of doing multiple choice questions, because your first year exam is going to be made up of multiple choice questions. And sometimes, and I've gone through a few things for the first years that's been set up by UNISA, and what I notice, there is hey Adele, there is a couple of answers. Hey, there's
Natalie,
a couple. Oh, sorry,
may I-
Adele.
May I please quickly just interrupt?
Yes, sure.
Firstly, can we just remind the students to please put their student numbers here in the chat? I see 3 students have already done that, but they must also complete the attendance register and at the end the feedback form. And then the other announcement is that I will be sending out between tonight and tomorrow the forms for one-on-one sessions with you, or what we call consultations. So we are sending that out to all the IOP1501 students, not just the students that can attend the team sessions. So you will receive an email, so please watch your email. And at the bottom of that email, you will find a link to click on, and there you will find the query form, which will go, you will add your query, and please be concise. Don't tell Natalie I don't understand the entire module, because then she can't help you. And then Natalie will respond to you as to how she will meet with you and when she will meet with you. And you will have a one-on-one session with Natalie. But you can only add 1 query per form, and you're allowed 2 sessions per week with Natalie. Okay, that's just some background. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks, Adele. No worries. So that question is quite easy to answer, because the table already explains what is rare, and then you just need to choose the appropriate one. But as I said, there might be 1 or 2 that is correct, but there's only 1 that is absolutely correct. So you have to be very careful in terms of how you read the questions and then the answer options to select the one that is most correct. Because there might be 1 or 2 that kind of also sounds correct, but there is one that is the absolute correct one. And then the other question on the next page asks for, as students study and work, they will develop their College of Economic and Management Science genetic transferable meta skills and attributes. This will become evident in everyday life as students engage in conflict resolution, initiating changes, rational judgments, financial awareness, accepting responsibility for own actions, self-improvement, identifying necessary resources, and avoid jargon and complicated language. Then they give you a couple of items below, and they say you must match the above actions in terms of the genetic transferable meta skill and personal attributes that had been developed below. So there's 8 questions that ask. So you must then say problem solving, decision-making skills. What is that meta skill that is being addressed there? So I would, for instance, say it is B. B is initiating change, as an example. The second question says enterprising skills. Where would enterprising skills fall? Probably D, financial awareness. Analytical skills, interactive skills, and so on. So my role is not to give you the answer to these. I have pinpointed you now to where in the tutorial letter you should start to find the answers to these. If you then want to book a session with me and say, these are my answers, this is my thinking around it, then we can definitely have a discussion on that. But I think for a first year assignment, this is not bad. Only thing to remember is that you need to answer or choose the answer that is most correct. And read your question. I cannot emphasize that enough. Read your question a couple of times to make sure you're answering the question that is posed. So that is what I can say about assignment 3. And if I get sent the attachment today, then I can also look at the preceding questions. So when you book some time with me, then we can really have a valuable session on just going through the assignment. And I am available tomorrow during the day if any one of you want to book some time. Are there any questions before I jump into our session of today? Thanks, Sandy. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Has Adele left? Because now I can't share my screen with you. And I could share my screen last week. Only meeting organizers and presenters can share. I am a presenter. Can I please share? What to do? I'm wondering if I shouldn't hang up and try to come back in again. But you all please stay on the line. I don't know why it doesn't want to share my screen. Recording has started. Adele, are you still here? Okay, I'm gonna hang up. But no, but then Adele is not is not going to be able to record if I now end this. And it doesn't want me to share my screen. Do you guys maybe see my screen?
No.
No.
No, no.
Okay, let me quickly WhatsApp Adele.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi.
If I look on Teams, it says that Adele is a presenter and you are an attendee, which is obviously not, that's why you can't share.
Yeah. What do you think? Should I go out and try and come back in again? Did you guys join on the link?
Yes, on the email,
Yes.
on the Outlook email.
Yeah, that's the same one I used. Let me just wait and see if Adele responds. Hey, Adele. Sorry, I'm just going to mute quickly. Hi guys, Adele is just going to see how they can sort that out from their side, and then we can proceed. But maybe just as an introduction, and hopefully I will keep my eye on the phone to see if she comes back to me. So today we're going to talk about the biological basis of behavior. And I really wanted to talk to you about the importance of this section as it refers to exams. Again, I have not set your exams. I have not seen your exams. I am nowhere near your exams. But what I recall from my time as either a student or later working at UWC with Industrial Psychology 1 and honor students, is that they love to ask questions out of this particular chapter in the exams. So I do think that as you go and you work through the textbook and you work through, I mean, there isn't much of notes that were given for this course. It basically refers you to the textbook, to the chapters that needs to be done. I really think you need to stand still with this chapter. And this is not work that needs to be understood as much as it is work that you just need to study.
Natalie,
Hi, Adele.
should be fixed now. Just test,
Okay.
please.
Yay.
Okay, good.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, Natalie.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Why do we need to understand the biology of the human body? I think it's important because it can pinpoint certain things within the biological makeup of the human being that manifests within their behavior. And if you are working as a people practitioner, you need to understand how the various systems in the body interrelate and how it can be described scientifically, because that ultimately will find its way in the behavior of somebody in the workplace. And as an industrial organizational psychologist, it is your role to understand human behavior within the work context so that you can bring the necessary interventions to address a particular situation. Are line managers equipped to do that? Not really, because you're the people expert. You're supposed to be the people expert. And it really starts, I almost want to say, at a cellular level. That understanding of human behavior starts at the cellular level. And you need to understand how those transmitters and systems in the human body works and how that translates into behavior. So that's really why this section is quite important. Because it can be seen as a key to unlock the reasons to why people behave the way they do in specific situation, and in essence to understand the way their mind works. So the concept of genetics. Genetics are cells which are the building blocks of life and are crucial to understanding the biological makeup of an individual, as it carries genetic material or hereditary factors, which together with environmental factors influences and play a role in determining certain human attributes and behaviors. So sometimes people behave because it is something in their gene makeup that make them behave in a particular way. Remember too that we don't work in the area of clinical psychology. So those type of behaviors that is in the clinical space does not line our domain, but you have to recognize it. You must be able to say that the behavior of this person in front of me is somewhat different than what I expect of a normal human being, and why. So cells are living organisms. All living organisms are made up of cells. So you and I, our entire body is made up of trillion cells, and each cell is a living unit. It performs chemical reactions and it helps the body to function properly. Let's look at the term mitosis. There's only females on the session, if I remember. There might be one male. So when the female egg fertilizes by the male sperm, a single cell is formed. From this cell, a human being develops. And this process of cell division eventually make up organs, muscles, glands, bone, blood, and nerves. And I think if you're an adult, whether you are male or female, you kind of understand the reproductive process, that it requires one sperm with one egg, and the result is 9 months later, you have a pink foot or a blue foot. DNA, that's the core of these cells, which are also known as the functional units of heredity. So the field of forensic investigation uses DNA to a large extent within the criminal system, because these DNA strains are very particular to an individual and not group of individuals. So DNA can be very similar from a family hereditary perspective, but also unique to a specific person. And this DNA can either put you in a very tight corner because it is irrefutable. Once DNA analysis is done and it pinpoints to a person, it has been proven to stand up in a court of law because a person's DNA is so unique, almost similar to that of a fingerprint. Meiosis is the process whereby on reaching puberty, humans are capable of reproducing, owing to a type of cellular division known as meiosis, which produces an egg and a sperm for males. And in mitosis, new daughter cells contain the same number of chromosomes as the parent cell, whilst in meiosis, each daughter cell receives only half the number of chromosomes of the parent cell. So I have a question for you. Fill in the missing word. We've gone through a few concepts now already, and I will page up a little bit. Yeah. So what is meiosis? Can you give me the answer to that question? Is it A, or B, or C, or E? Which best answers question 1? And if you don't want to talk, no, please talk, because I'm in my screen now. I can't see the chat. Which one of those?
I said C.
You said C.
I said E. C. Okay.
And somebody else is saying E.
No, I said C as well. I think
Oh,
so.
you said C as well.
Okay.
You might be surprised to hear that the answer there is E.
Oh.
So can you see what I mean with you really need to, and what I worry about is that you are going to do an online exam, and it's probably going to be open book, but it's going to be a timed exam. So do not think that it is going to be easy, because you really, really need to apply your mind and think about this and read again and read again and read again to get to the answer that is required.
Can you explain that answer?
Sure.
Natalie? Thank you.
Sure. Let me try and explain that a little bit more. So part of meiosis is that the chromosomes arrange themselves in homologous, I hope I'm saying this right, pairs. So they thus termed because each chromosome in the pair carries genes producing similar body attributes. So all of that affects changes in the DNA composition, because when those cells split up and they do their own thing, whether it's a daughter cell, whether it's an X or a Y chromosome, it then gives you that uniqueness that refers to a DNA process. So that is the best explanation that I can give in terms of what meiosis is. So it is, there's an egg, there's a sperm, there is a fertilization, then there is, in that process, is the transference of an X chromosome and a Y chromosome, and the number of chromosomes is 46, and if it's less than 46, you get different kind of syndromes that result from that. So as the cells not duplicate, but as they split and form new life, it becomes the unique DNA composition of a person. That's the best explanation I can give for that.
Thank you.
So if you look at the issue of twins, and if you're also doing, are all of you doing module 1601? No.
Nat, can you repeat that?
No.
No.
Are any of you registered for IOP 1601?
No.
Okay, because in that module, we talk about personality. How is personality formed? And there's a couple of hereditary factors and a couple of environmental factors that impacts the formation of personality. Now, they did a lot of studies with twins to determine whether it is nature or nurture that plays a role in the outcome of a human being in terms of what that human being is about, what they stand for, and the behaviors that they exhibit within different contexts. So there was a school of thought that thought identical twins, what if they test these people over a number of years? What are some of those hypotheses that they want to test when they look at twins, and specifically identical twins, and then also looking at non-identical twins? Now, the way identical twins happen is that there's one egg and one sperm that gets fertilized, but in that fertilization, there is a splitting of the cells and it becomes two sacs with two babies that look identical because it was one egg and one sperm. Now, what happens with non-identical twins? When you get non-identical twins, there's actually nothing that stands out from being a non-identical twin from any of your other siblings. Because non-identical twins is formed when there are two eggs that's fertilized by two separate sperms, and there's two sacs and two babies formed. But because it's a unique egg and sperm in the one and a different unique egg and sperm in the others, you then find twins that are non-identical. So they're just siblings, but they were in gestation at the same time. And these studies have indicated that there are greater differences between identical twins that have been separated and brought up in different environments than between those who have grown up in the same environment. So they were interested in finding out if you had, and I mean, we can look at this in the family context as well, when we look at the issue of twins. When you are brothers and sisters growing up in the same house with the same mom and the same dad, you would assume that certain things would be the same, because our outlook in life is very much determined through our shared experiences. But how many of you know that you could have the same mother and father, live in the same home, and be vastly different people, both from a worldview, in terms of how you behave, what are the things that interest you, motivates you, drives you, but your nurturing environment has been the same, yet very, very different and individual people that comes out of that family environment. So this study specifically just wanted to see from a cellular level what happens that causes people to be more alike, and what are those causes that makes people, whether they are identical twins or non-identical twins, whether they were separated at birth or whether they grew up together, what are those cellular and environmental things that either makes them the same or make them different? And I think it's important in how it helped the earlier psychologists in putting together theories on how people develop over time. Sex determination, I think that is quite self-explanatory. Sex of a baby is determined by the father's chromosome. So if the mother has an X or two X chromosomes and the father has XY chromosome, the father's sperm, so the father's DNA, the father's chromosome set up determines the sex of the baby. And you can see there it is, if X and X and X and Y, then the baby is a daughter. If X and Y and X and Y, mother and father, then the baby is a boy. So it's very interesting at a cellular level what happens. So this dispels any myth that you can actually do something from the outside to help promote getting either a baby girl or a baby boy at the end of the day. It's happening at the cellular level. Genotype and phenotype. The genotype of each individual refers to their genetic design, which determines aspects such as intelligence, temperament, personality traits, and predispositions to certain illnesses, such as type of cancers, Huntington disease, muscular diseases, and various others. And you will know that you can actually test for a gene mutation within you that makes you prone, or the probability of you getting a certain type of cancer can actually be determined today through very sophisticated tests, or whether you have a gene in your body that is prone to muscular disease is a very big one. And how, when you work with gene mutation, how that can actually help people with muscular disease issues. There's no cure for these things, but there is a way of slowing down the disease, and that it not just rampant go through your body at a very quick rate. But there's no cure, and there's a lot of research being done at the moment that works with genotype research, etc., also to help bring relief to people who are suffering within this. When it comes to temperament, you sometimes see in families that there are either the mom and the daughter, or the mom and the dad, and it works across the parents and the boys and girls that they have, that there are people which is similar in temperament. And it's for obvious reasons, because you share a similar DNA with those people. And obviously there are certain traits, personality traits and temperament that would be very similar. For instance, if you have a family that's all, teachers, mom and dad is a teacher, and there's always one or two of the children that are also teachers, because it relates to a temperament or a personality trait, or a liking for working within a particular discipline, for instance. You get the same with doctors. The father's a doctor, the child is a doctor, and so it's gone on in the history of that family over time, whether it's architects, whether it's nursing. And it's also about the environmental influences, because you were born into a family of teachers. That's your environment, that's what you know, that's what you see as an example of success. And that is then something that you also want to do, thrive to do, because you either see it's enjoyable work, it's a way of being successful in life, it's about, paying it forward, helping people to achieve. And those are all kind of temperament and personality trait things. If we come to multiple determination, so in gene therapy, they talk about a dominant gene and a recessive gene, but by the combined if you combine the influences of genes, you will see that there's always one that is more dominant than the other. This includes intelligence, temperament, and personality. So intelligence, and last week we also spoke a little about, no, that was the third, yes. Intelligence comprises various factors, including verbal fluency, verbal comprehension, reasoning, ability, abstract thinking, ability to see spatial relations, and number facility. Temperament, again, refers to the prevalence of certain moods in an individual, such as being predominantly active or passive, or being quick or slow to react emotionally. Personality also consists of various traits that are seen as partly caused by hereditary. Sometimes you have in families where there is a particular illness that everybody in the family has, or everybody in the family gets, because of hereditary factors. And we know that hereditary factors are determined at a cellular level. And some of the terminology we've just gone through explains some of those cellular activities and the splitting thereof and the chromosomes and all of that, and how that together gives you intelligence, temperament, personality. I think the two things when we look at the biology of chapter 2, I think the two things that is probably most important is the central nervous system and the brain. And if I was a lecturer, this would definitely be an exam question. So it's important for you then to understand the central nervous system, which contains both the brain and the spinal cord, and how that integrates and controls our movement, our speech, everything that we do comes from, I want to use an IT term now, that operating system. And what you need to know there is you get a peripheral nervous system, and that system contains your cranial nerves, your spinal nerves, and it also is the communication between the central nervous system and the rest of the body. And the peripheral nervous system is then, the sensory is part of there's a division of the peripheral nervous system that is sensory. And this is somatic and visceral sensory nerve fibers, and it conducts impulses from receptors to the central nervous system. So these, ladies and gentlemen, are not terms that you need to, you really just need to learn these, because this is not, they say psychology is an applied field, but when you look at the central nervous system and you look at the brain, then those are exact functions of what they do. So you can't argue a case here. It's either you know what the central nervous system, the peripheral, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic division does, and these are just definitions that you need to learn off by heart. So if we look at the other side, which is more related to the spinal cord, you get your motor division. These are motor nerve fibers, conducts impulses from the central nervous system to the muscles and the glands within the body. And if you then go further down, it refers to the autonomous nervous system and the somatic nervous system. And if you look at autonomic nervous system, it's the involuntary visceral motor. It conducts impulses from the nervous system to the heart, the muscles, the smooth muscles, and the glands. On the somatic nervous system side, it's voluntary. It conducts impulses from the central nervous system to the skeletal muscles. And if you really look at the spinal cord and you study the spinal cord in detail, the T vertebrae, the lumbar area, and all those things, then you can see. I had an injury a while back, and the injury was in my neck and in my back around T5, but I felt numbness in my finger. So I was complaining about the numbness in my finger, and I had to understand that actually rubbing the finger is not the solution, but going for physiotherapy on the back where that T5 vertebrae and nerve system operates, that is what's going to give me the relief from having a numb index finger. And when I went to the doctor could be very specific and say, which finger? I said, index finger. Okay, if it's index finger, then it refers to T5 within the spinal cord, that something there is not lacquer. So these systems tells you exactly which part of the body it services. Autonomic, we saw it's cardiac, muscles, smooth muscles, and glands. And somatic, we see it conducts impulses from the central nervous system to the skeletal muscles. And it's a very, very intricate process. And we know from an autonomic nervous system, it then further divides into sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic, it mobilizes the body segments during emergency situations. So that is where you get your fight or flight response from. And the parasympathetic division conserves energy, promotes non-emergency functions, etc. So sympathetic is more your flight or fight. What must I do in this situation? I'm in a bad situation. What do I do? What do I do? And your impulse would either be frozen on the spot, or somebody is putting a gun to your head and you run for your life, or you have a dog chasing you or something. That's the part of the brain that would be at play there. If you look at the brain, ladies and gentlemen, it is important that for your study as part of 1501, you understand the various areas in the brain. They might give you a picture like this in an exam situation. It would have the lines that is drawn in there, and you may have to write in what the various areas of the brain is named, it's called, and you might also be asked what is the function specifically of that area of the brain. So this is pure study work. There's no guessing because it's very specific as to which area does what. There's the reticular activation system, there's the cerebellum, and if you look at the picture here, it's situated at the back of the brain, right over there, and here you can see what are those things that part of the brain is for. So this part of the brain records and stores childhood movements and actions required for different movements for recall throughout life. So a way that you can remember this, if you learn to ride a bicycle in childhood and you have not driven a bicycle for the next 20 years, in year 21, when you want to get on a bicycle, you will have total recall of the motor skills required to ride a bike. So that's one easy way that you can look at the cerebellum. Damage to the cerebellum results in uncoordinated movement, affecting actions such as walking, writing, or making music. The thalamus. This acts as a relay station from which impulses are routed to and from the cerebral cortex. Except for the sense of smell and sensory impulses arriving at the brain, must pass through the thalamus before being projected upward to specific areas of the cortex. Again, these are things that you have. So I will almost say, take a blank picture of the brain, try and see whether you can mark each of the areas of the brain and just write in pencil what is the function of that part. The limbic system, consists of a number of structures that links the thalamus and the hypothalamus, and it involves emotional responses such as excitement, despondency, mobility, passivity, and anger. And that is the limbic system. So again, you must be able to pinpoint this in the correct position. The cerebral cortex, it's the outer layer of the brain, comprising approximately 80% of the total brain capacity of humans, and processes complex mental data and is referred to as the grey matter of the brain. In colloquial terms, people would say, hey, that person doesn't have a lot of grey matter. And what do you think they refer to? They would say the flip side, lots of grey matter there. Because of that part of the brain being responsible for processing complex mental data. The neuron. The neuron is the main transmitter of communication throughout the nervous system. The chemicals released into the synaptic gap are called neurotransmitters, which contributes to regulation of mental activity and different behaviors in different parts of the nervous system. This is where people with clinical diagnoses, whether that is schizophrenia, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, it is caused by a chemical imbalance. That synapse that happens within the neurons, something in that synaptic transmission is cut off, goes wrong, is not making connection with the next neuron to transmit communication through the nervous system. And that is where a lot of mental disorders stem from. Because that chemical release is not in perfect balance. And that is why people that are clinically diagnosed for those disorders, the start of treatment is normally difficult because the dosages is a trial and error process. So because we are so unique in our makeup, the one dosage doesn't necessarily work for the next person because of the extent of that chemical imbalance on a continuum. Then we talk to the peripheral nervous system. Although the brain and the spinal cord make up the central nervous system, information is fed into and out of the central nervous system by means of peripheral nerves. So these are the guys that's on the outside, and they the gateway into and out of the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system consists of all the nerves which connect the spinal cord and the brain to the various organs and tissues. So if you have not known that, you know now that we are a very complicated setup of cells, neurons, chemicals in the brain, gray matter that influences things like intelligence, etc. And then we are faced with a human being where the entire body is going through all of these processes, and when it is not in perfect harmony, that is where we find situations at work where people are displaying behavior that is either not accepted or it is behavior that is out of character. If you've known somebody for a while and just all of a sudden the person acts completely out of character, and there's normally a reason behind that that can be found in the anatomy of how we are put together. So we've talked to the central nervous system and now the autonomic nervous system. These consist of neurons situated in the head, neck, thorax, abdomen, and pelvis, and is responsible for the regulation of visceral organ activities, amongst which are heart rate, smooth muscle contraction, gastrointestinal motility, and secretion, and urinary bladder emptying. Emptying. That is the autonomic nervous system. So it's about bladder control, it's about gastrointestinal issues, heart rate are some of the systems that is affected. The somatic nervous system consists of motor neurons which begin in the spinal cord or the brainstem and end on skeletal muscle. It is connected with the receptors in the skin, the inner tissue, the joints, and skeletal muscles to bring about movement. Now, when you have something like joint issues, for instance, or whether you have autoimmune issues, that's probably the area responsible for that. The endocrine system, you might know that the endocrine system is quite a system. It is a big system. It is responsible for, among others, regulating insulin within the body. It's also related to hormonal imbalances or balance in hormones, and it's transmitted via the bloodstream. That is why you need a blood test for a more accurate reading of your glucose, insulin resistance, diabetes, etc., because it's all managed within the endocrine system. If there's a hormone imbalance, it is also sitting within the endocrine system. And if any one of these systems are not in sync, then you are going to see either the person is going to be presenting as quite poorly from being not well, or you may see things from a hormonal perspective, where people pick up a lot of weight, as an example. Now, sometimes you would look at an obese person and you would think, oh, can't they just not eat less? But there's a medical situation behind that. And if you don't have that medical situation, count yourself lucky, because it is a known fact that these things within the endocrine system is not easy fixes. And again, like in the area which is regulating mood, from a medication point of view, it's also very difficult to find the right dosages to equalize the hormones and to get the glands that needs to secrete, whether that is hormones or insulin or any of the other sectors of the endocrine system. It's when everything is in harmony that the body is well-oiled, and it is healthy at a cellular level. But we know most of the time we are confronted with people that are suffering from these kind of ailments because one or other system in the body is not working optimally. And the way we can try and get the body to be at its best, at its optimal level, it is really to eat well, to sleep well, and to move well, meaning exercise, eating the right kinds of food, eating clean, so that the cells in the body can get the necessary nutrition so that it then does its job as it is supposed to do. But modern life and in the home environment, less homemade food is cooked and more quick foods and easy options and takeaways and that type of thing is part of our daily lives because people are leading very busy lives at the moment. But those values of a healthy home-cooked meal is going to preserve these various systems within the body at its most optimal level. It is when we put things into the body that is not good for it that we sometimes create some of these medical problems for ourselves. The muscle system. Human movement is made possible by a muscle system that extends over the whole body and is connected to both motor and sensory nerves. Repetitive strain refers to overuse of certain body elements, like working with a computer mouse, that can cause carpal tunnel syndrome. Overuse disorder or repetitive strain injuries often occur in soft connective tissue. So if you have a breakdown in the muscle system, you would have diagnoses such as fibromyalgia, for instance, because that is when the soft connective tissues within the body is affected. And the result of that is pain. It is a pain syndrome that occurs in the soft tissue of the body. People with frozen shoulder or carpal tunnel syndrome, mostly it is because of life working behind a computer. And when we work on a computer, it is very important, because the next one talks to working body posture. It is very important that we set up our desk in such a way that it gives the body the best chance to not strain itself. Because that's how you get a frozen shoulder, that's how you get carpal tunnel syndrome, that's how you get back problems, because the job that you might be doing is forcing your body in a specific posture that then strain those muscles and it leads to problems. And I think just generally for us to be aware of how we sit when we study, how we sit when we watch television, and how we sit when we're in front of our computer. It is sitting right back into your chair, making sure that the backs of your chair is against your back. And if I must ask each of you, if you are sitting in the right position, it might be interesting to see how many is leaning forward, or your screen might be too low and it should be at eye level. And it's all things that we can do in our everyday lives and the way we go about our environment that can either help the muscle system or it places strain and causes injury on the muscle system. So it is important that we really give attention to that. And it's easy fixes that we can do, but we do need to have an awareness of how our daily routines and how we do things can impact the muscle system. Poor body posture can cause permanent damage to body tissue and should be taken into consideration, especially in jobs that require employees to assume such positions. As part of my studies many years ago, we needed, one of our research tasks was that you need to identify a workplace, you need to go do an assessment within the workplace and see whether your observations can then lead to suggestions in how to improve the workspace. Because at the end of the day, you want people that's working for your organization to have the best advantage to push up productivity. So you want to make the space that they work in conducive and comfortable for them to perform in. And we chose a factory that made ladies' stockings. And these ladies were receiving the stockings from the line, and they had to do quality assurance of the stockings. And that meant that they needed to be on their feet for the entire 8-hour shift. Now, if you just change something in that work setup, it can already bring so much relief to somebody who has to stand because of how the workstation has been set up. And we made our recommendations. Whether they implied those recommendations, I don't know. But if it's not necessary for somebody to be standing on their feet for 8 hours, why can't you redesign the environment to better suit the person? Because now what you have is you have people with sore legs and sore backs and everything is paining, whereas if they could sit and do the job and even have a better output rate, then you have won as a people practitioner within the workplace. Now, in white-collar environments, working body posture is mostly taken care of. And it's the individual engaging with that work environment that needs to know what are the areas in my physique that I need to support further. Is it that I need a chair with arm rails so that I can rest my mouse arm on an arm rail, and then it makes it easier for you to navigate your mouse so that you have less pain at the end of the day from doing that repetitive activity. Loss of muscle power. Reduced or complete loss of muscle power is caused by physiological conditions, disease, or injury. And in the workplace, you are going to have to deal with people who get an injury on the job. And complete loss of muscle power is called paralysis. In terms of work demand, most people can work even with a loss of muscle power. I was responsible in my organization of bringing in people into the workplace with disability. And I have seen firsthand how from somebody who is not disabled, and you look at the world through the lens of not having a disability. And you think that people with a disability might not be able to do the kind of jobs that you have for them. And I was happily, pleasantly surprised. I appointed a guy in my team that worked as a business analyst, and he was 100% blind. And the reasonable accommodation we needed to make for this person was so minimal. And he did spreadsheets, he sent out sales volumes every Friday to all our franchise businesses. And the people reading those spreadsheets would never have thought that this was work produced by a blind person. That person didn't even have a monitor on his desk. There's a software that we put on the computer, and that software spoke through earphones to him, and that is why he could navigate all the programs that he needed to do and give a work output at the level of a business analyst. And yet he had no sight. Design of workstations. Height, seating, space for body movements, controls within reach, grips, handles, chairs, armrests, all of those kind of things is what we referred to last week when we spoke about ergonomics. So that's the ergonomic design of your workstation. Hopefully, you will never be in a situation where you have to set up an office from scratch and where you are the person that must decide on the heights of the desk, what type of chairs, can the chair move up or down. Normally in organizations, there is a facilities department and they kind of do the purchasing and the procurement of furniture and those kind of things. But it's important that an HR person, when somebody presents with a specific need, you need to have the insight into what can be done in order to accommodate the different needs that this person had. We had people in wheelchairs that had to work on computers, but the extent of their neurological damage was such that their arms and hands were not fluid to work the keyboard. But 2 fingers can also type a letter. 2 fingers can also do an email. So it's really looking at what is possible and how you can assist people to be gainfully employed even though they have a disability. But it is the job of the people practitioner to make these things a possibility. So in conclusion, we've explored the basic factors and the processes that determine the biological foundation of human development and behavior. The complex biological interaction that enable one to understand human behavior were also discussed. It is important to understand the relations between psychology, biology, and environmental processes when designing tasks, jobs, equipment, and work environments. This allows one to ensure the safety, comfort, and effectiveness of individuals, groups, and organizations. And I have 3 minutes left because I want to be respectful of our time constraints. So ladies and gentlemen, daar is die einde van my story. Are there any questions?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Natalie. This is now not really about today's chapter, but I would like to ask your opinion about how should we tackle the textbook, because it's actually really overwhelming with all the information that's in the textbook, and there's no study guide to guide you on the chapters that you should focus on more than the others. So how would you say should we tackle it? Should we just summarize it basically like 1 or 2 principles per subject? Because I think, well, from my side, it's impossible to work full-time with 4 modules and study each and every single word.
Yes, I think you've actually answered yourself at the same time. Jolene, was that you talking?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I've gone through the textbook. I've looked at the information that's provided. And the textbook is written very scientifically. And you have to summarize your chapters. And I think my notes will also help in trying to extract just the gist and important things, because otherwise you're going to get lost in all of the verbiage that is in the textbook. But I think it's important that you summarize, you read a quick glance, and then you take a pencil or a highlighter and you highlight the parts that you like. And personally, I like to make summaries because the activity of making a summary and writing it down, it helps me also to remember, and it helps me to make sense of what I'm actually writing down. It's not just looking at the book and writing it down, but it's reading it, understanding, and making a note for you at the end of the day. And that is going to become what you study versus, again, looking at the textbooks. So it's important that every Tuesday, as we go through some of the chapters, that you really make time to also study some of the chapters up front, make your own highlights. So when we talk about it here, it's not that you're hearing or seeing it for the first time. Because this module of industrial psychology is very much the theory, the methodology, the biology, the makeup, which makes a person tick. So it's really understanding that. It's almost like the technical parts that make up the field of psychology. And then in module 1601, we then do a double click specifically in, let's just look at personality. How is personality influenced? What are all the aspects of personality, etc.? And so it goes further. Other module might look at just at assessment. But this module gives you the introduction. And you need to understand the introduction before some of the other modules, the specialization, really makes sense for you. So yes, to answer your question, do a first read through, do a second read through, and just highlight the important points. Make study notes for yourself, and that's how you prepare for an exam. Because I don't think they're going to tell you only study chapter 3 and 8 and just ignore the others. Wouldn't that be so much easier? So, ladies and gents, Adele said she will send you forms. If you need a one-on-one with me, please make contact. I cannot wait to meet you face to face. And if there's nothing further, then we shall see each other again same time next week.
Sorry, Natalie?
Yes?
Can I ask the students to make sure they complete the feedback form that I've posted a while ago?
And the attendance register.
Yep, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Please help Adele in getting the administration done.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, everybody. Ira?
Thank
Thank you, Natalie. That was